A new patch has gone live in Star Citizen as the game puts forth another 3 months of progress to the public. Yes, that's right, the game is actually being worked on. And while my content will mainly be looking at the future and what's to come, here's a review of the new patch for you, complete with a recommendation on how you should approach the update. And if you think this content is helpful and useful and possibly even entertaining, consider subscribing or even supporting my work on Patreon. Thank you for coming to my Tomato Talk. And thanks to my newest supporters, Caractacus Potts and Suitor5. Let's start with the big visual changes, caves being our first topic. The new cave entrances are exactly what they say, entrances. While there's a large amount of space to explore towards the beginning of the cave, from what I've discovered so far, don't expect a vast winding labyrinth of ship-accessible tunnels. We still aren't there yet. What the cave entrances do offer, though, are new mining opportunities. This actually quite surprised me, and I got a lot of great shots doing it that I think I'll make a short video out of. There are also new combat and assassination missions, a better sense of scale and curiosity in these central locations that do branch off in different directions, and a great place to stage some community events. These are a nice addition, but ultimately, not a fundamental one. Another visual improvement that also required some work on the code side, asteroids. These new asteroids look much better than the old ones, but the update hasn't touched everything in this game. This leads to asteroids looking different in different areas, as well as mineable asteroids really sticking out in the game. I don't really like this. I hope the rest of these asteroids are updated pretty quickly. Regardless, some of them get huge, like big enough to hide multiple ships around huge, and that is actually a feature being developed for later this year. The asteroids in particular, however, are only eye candy, and aside from updating the organics workflow for asteroids, doesn't add anything too important to the game in the near future, in my opinion. The planetary creation engine in Star Citizen is one of a kind. It creates some incredibly detailed yet massive spaces, full spherical bodies with complete day-night cycles and complex atmospheres. But it has been an iterative process, as I've detailed in my recent video, which can be found down below. Thus, new additions and polishes are always being experimented with and applied, occasionally unseen for some time, such as rock arches and canyons. This patch saw the final Stanton polish pass applied to all existent moons and planets. This brings the system up to the standard that Crusader will release at, and allow the team to start focusing on the extra bits and details around the star system. There are many small additions to be found regarding this feature. I actually discovered frozen lakes on Yella while filming for this video, and published a whole video about the new feature that you can check out down below in the video description. What I can say after spending some time in the update is this: go explore for yourself and see if you can find something unique, because sometimes other people miss them. 3.13 won't have ship-to-station docking, which is due in a secondary patch in the next month or two. But ship-to-ship docking is working flawlessly, almost 100% of the time between the Constellation and its snub fighter, whether you are going or arriving.
Request to dock activated. Landing gear raised. Auto docking activated. Docking concluded. Engine system disengaged.
Being able to dock with another moving player-controlled object is a very cool experience. The UI to dock is incredibly simple, minimal, and functional. As a UI that I expect to see often and don't want to be distracting, I find this great. While my desire is to dock by eye, we all know I can't. And this system does a great job of actually getting me docked without overwhelming me in the process. The ability to match velocity with your docking target is also really cool, something I hope we see for all ships soon again. While this may be a small implementation of docking, make no mistake, the ability to dock two ships together marks one of the biggest turning points in ship functionality in the game's history. This functionality makes quite a few other features possible and remains an incredibly fundamental change. Space stations actually saw some improvements this update. They are small and almost not even worth mentioning, but here they are, and one of them you may not have heard about. There are a total of 4 new methods by which you can refine minerals. These will provide you with a few different outcomes based on time, yield, and the amount you'd like to pay on the job. Experiment around a bit and see if you can find a new favorite. There was also a change to the refining screen, which I hope is a sign of what mining could be, but I highly doubt it. Finally, the refinery stations got a new mood, dark and gloomy. The lobbies at mineral refinery stations are now much more industrial in nature, ditching a lot of the advertisement and bright white light for more exposed piping, dim lighting, and dark walls. Not an important addition again, but probably something small they were able to tackle this quarter. The Reputation UI is a nice coating over a system that was actually already implemented. But what this nice coating represents is the first player-visible progression method in the game, with the only real critical progression measurements being credits, reputation, and personal skill. With no skill tree or perk system to unlock, it can be hard to get a good idea of where you stand in this game. Now, players have something to strive for, work towards, and maintain as they grow in the verse. And with every update, new additions will build on this system with new missions, organizations, perks, variables, and key figures. Without a doubt, the most significant addition in this update to the overarching success of this game, in my opinion, is the realization of a reputation tracking system. We'll be touching on this quite a bit in the future, and I'll likely have a full video about it for you to get the full details later in the quarter. Until then, you can see my recent full preview of the feature in the corner or down in the video description. On the mission side of things, we have a few additions as well as some changes. Along with those large caves we saw earlier, a smattering of NPCs were thrown into the mix for some subterranean FPS missions. These involve both lawful and unlawful variants. You'll be dealing with the same AI you see in the bunkers, so if you don't enjoy that, there's a good chance you won't enjoy this. New delivery missions are also being introduced with different types of cargo that could explode based on a set of rules. I haven't run all of them, but I can say the quantum sensitive missions are quite boring to do alone, and I think a tad bit too long. We went through one together on stream over on Twitch, and we for the most part did not enjoy anything but the conversation. You can see those streams using the link in the video description below. Push and pull as an initial implementation is admittedly useless to the majority of players. The effort it takes to find a cart, get it to your ship, and use it to transport boxes around is just not worth it. That being said, the feel and look of using them is pretty spot on. While I haven't experienced the carts under load, I've pushed them around pretending to be at Home Depot quite a bit. And the body language of the character as well as the very weighty, draggy feel of the carts makes me think this is a good feeling first go of it. Again, though, still largely useless, but it remains a fundamental addition. The ability to interact with surfaces in a more engaging way has been touted for quite some time. This is the first time we can do it for ourselves, and I have no doubt the way this feature is expanded upon later in the year and beyond will definitely be very useful. I do really hope, though, that the feature becomes more systemic. I should be able to grab this cart whether it's on its wheels or on its side. Speaking of interacting with surfaces, let's talk about the new force reactions. What are force reactions? These are the movements your characters make when an outside force is exerted on them. Sometimes gunshots, grenades, blasts, but mainly on spaceships. The first implementation last year introduced flinches and literally just getting thrown on the floor. This new pass on the feature has cleaned those movements up a bit and added staggers, the most realistic reaction I think a person would have to being on a spaceship. And while we couldn't get it to trigger with one ship hitting the other, which was actually detrimental to the health of everyone involved, we did get the weapon-created staggers working. We even got the wall animation to work, which included your character reaching up to steady themselves against the wall when they fell into it. I believe this server performance and general desync between me and the pictured character over 5,000 miles away in Germany are mainly to blame for the not so great look, but I do think there are still some ways that the animations could be improved here. Altogether, not an important update, but a cool one. It's eye candy. Mounted guns were another small addition to the game that I hesitate to call useless. See, the feature as it's implemented is altogether useless. Nobody is ever going to clear out the defenses of the bunker to then seriously use the turrets outside. I mean, maybe use it for machinima or an org event, but they just aren't useful for most players like this. You'll find them in other random places like this, none very useful for anything mission related. But that's not why they're here. What I think happened here is just game development happening on a public stage. This tech was needed elsewhere. It could benefit upcoming content in Star Citizen, and it could fit into this update. So it worked its way in here for something that doesn't really matter at the current time. A standardized set of rules and specifications for mounted turret gameplay will play into a lot of ships and sequences in the future. And that's the thing. If we look at two features that seem pretty bare, but are actually quite important, and think about how they could be combined with one final feature in the future, it starts to make more sense. But I think this also captures some of the frustration in following this project. It can sometimes feel a bit scattered, and honestly, sometimes it kinda is. But each addition is one check off the list towards a full-featured game. So I'll take a low-key fundamental. In 3.13, the rug was pulled out from under the update when not only the Hercules Starlifter, massive cargo hauler, was pushed back into the following month of May, but also the long-awaited Tumbril Nova tank. Not sure why so anticipated, but it is. Lucky for those looking for at least some of that ground-based goodness, there is still hope. Two completely unannounced vehicles have rolled into the update. One, a rather interesting choice of mining vehicle. It is a larger ground mining vehicle, the Grin Rock DS, and it includes a climate-controlled cockpit as well as an external seat and mining laser for that best friend mining fun. The weird bit about this vehicle is that it has two seats, but only one person is protected. So, making good, consistent use of this vehicle in extreme environments is likely a one-person task. Too bad, considering the laser can't be controlled from inside the main seat. It's a bummer, but I think somebody will find this fits their case, and maybe Cloud Imperium will consider switching things up to make it more generally useful. The other vehicle is, for all intents and purposes, just a smaller Tumbril Nova tank, as in it is a moving, ground-based anti-air and vehicular vehicle. The Tumbril Cyclone MT is a two-person fast attack vehicle with both air and ground-compatible weaponry. It isn't the heaviest punching like the tank, but the mobility of the base vehicle and efficiency of having one person handling weapons while the other handles steering creates what will likely be a top ground vehicle for most organizations. It's certainly still not the most easy thing to use, both driving and shooting, but the experience improves every year, and maybe with gameplay and network-based fixes coming soon, we can expect something better. Make sure to subscribe to this channel for the full review of the Hercules Starlifter when it does come out though, if you liked that Mercury Starrunner review from earlier. The Shields update in Alpha 3.13 is an interesting one. The feature itself is a big one, but the implementation of it remains a bit scattered. With the complexity of such a feature, it just couldn't hit the desired deadline in full. So while the shields visually grip the ships we fly in a new, more streamlined fashion, the full functionality will be added in the next update in July. With that, while the feature as a whole is fundamental, from what I've seen, this half is just a solid addition. For vehicle customization, I'm actually going to group together two features: visual degradations on a ship, and the visually represented names and serial numbers that will represent our ships in the game database. And before you get too excited about ship naming, it's a fickle topic. as not all ships have the functionality yet, so make sure to check if your ship is included in the link down below. The names themselves aren't very impressive, but as a first implementation, they seem to be working at a basic level. The prerequisites needed to get this working, I think, were very crucial, but this feature, both in usefulness and in implementation, isn't even really eye candy. It's just kinda there. As for ship degradation, I actually haven't had much experience, but it seems to be working, and it adds a cool story and background to each ship. I hope to see more complex and diverse effects as time goes on and biomes expand. I'd also like to see scorch marks from battle and atmospheric entry, but as it is now, it's a fairly basic implementation as well, and it looks nice, but does not do much for the game. It's also not included on several ships just yet, so I'd call this an eye candy edition, to be sure. Mining is the model child of the profession-based bunch. The kid that got out of the house right on time but remained a loving and ever-growing part of the family. Mining was brought into the game back in 2018 when we were told we'd be getting the game's professions in the next 2 years. Oof. It has steadily improved ever since and remains the bar for other upcoming professions like medical, salvage, and refueling gameplay, even while it continues to improve. In this update, we are seeing subcomponents introduced to the game for the first time. They will be available for all components in the game, but in this context, they are for mining lasers. These components act as passive buffs and nerfs to your mining laser and can change various things about your experience. And while they aren't incredibly useful in a vacuum, they can slightly mix things up in more complex situations and add to the ever-evolving culture of min-maxing everything. I ultimately didn't find them very useful even as a frequent miner, so I'll give them a resounding decent. Not much has been done to the law system since implementation, though several features have been adding to the eventual true birth of the bounty hunting profession. In 3.13, another one of these feature updates has arrived. These updates to the law system include proxy crime when one person on board a ship commits a felony, and the option to hide notifications in criminal rating updates. Bounty hunters will also receive updates on the bounty marker when a target spends credits, and when a target's mobiGlas terminal remains in use for a period of time. The information will also be updated when the target is killed but not arrested. These are probably only worth a patch note, but I thought they were interesting as we track the bounty hunter profession. All in all, it's small stuff, iterative, and mostly doesn't change the game for many players. Decent. Reportedly, VOIP support has improved in the game, allowing players to communicate with party members and others either through ship and suit radios or proximity chat.
I don't know if I talk now over comms, or if you talk something, I don't know if it's louder.
This feature has been in for a while but has always been pretty hit or miss, and really suffers in reliability and ease of use. In fact, when using this new improved version, we actually had a ton of problems, constantly.
Keep on telling good stuff to talk about, keep the audio in all dimensions of you and all around.
The fact that radio communications are also relayed to proximity players is pretty bad as far as trying to keep your plans a secret. And the volume issues are constantly a problem, with voices often coming through too quiet and nobody understanding if the settings being changed are actually working. The interface looks like it's doing stuff, but is it? Also, shout out to this guy. But overall, it needs to be easier to use, easier to test, and easier to understand for the feature to be worth suggesting. As of 3.13 though, skip it. While flying through gas clouds, you'll now encounter asteroid debris, and if you're really quiet, you may be able to hear it impacting off the hull of the ship. I couldn't get the pitter-patter that I expected, but I sure saw a lot of it, and definitely encountered some sounds, though these may have been due to the damage my ship had taken, in which case, good job, audio. And in dogfights, I've noticed now that AI audio waveform representing their dialogue now appears under the ship. I wonder if this is an addition meant for all ships, both player and NPC. I like it and hope it's permanent with the ability to disable in the future if you'd like to, especially for accessibility. Not an important feature, just something I would call a quality of life change to finish up this update.
Targets destroyed.
For those who came for the summary or my recommendation on this update, I'll leave it here. This is a new thing I'm going to do for those wondering if they should bother jumping in. I'll make it as simple as possible. The game has not moved much from the last patch. Because of that, I would say casual players should avoid. Interested parties should try out the inevitable free fly event and dynamic event likely in May, and excited players should hop in and try the new features. But for the majority of people, this is not the update to come back for. With an already light gameplay change, the loss of 2 vehicles until May just takes the wind out of this one. It's a staging update, preparing on the back and the front end for some big feature updates. Until then, I'll be bringing out monthly and quarterly updates along with gameplay, features, talk shows, and more. So subscribe to keep up with Star Citizen and come join me on my 3 times a week live stream. If you'd like to support my work and keep me going, you can join my Patreon and gain quite a few nice perks like early videos and typed up monthly summaries. Whatever you do decide, I appreciate you being here, and I hope to see you in the next one. Big thanks to my top supporters TK, Valiant15, Ben N, the Alpaca, the Huntress, Holston Coop, Falcus Vipus, Dosek, Guilty Conscious, and Extreme Tuber 7.